Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome to another edition of OB at Night here on the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Geoff Ketchum. As we get ready to, or as I get ready to have people jump into the chat, we're going to be doing a number of different things tonight. We're going to be talking about Texas practice. There will be a lot of Texas football practice discussion in tonight's show, including some notes from today's practice, which we haven't even had up on orangebloods.com yet. So, we put our very first comments of the show. What up, Jet Petler, otherwise known as Trip on Two Wheels, here in the chat. Glad to see you guys coming into the chat. Again, a lot of Texas football discussion today, including first day in pads, a review of what we've heard about what took place Tuesday over on the 40 acres, and there will be some quarterback discussion. There will be some offensive line discussion. And at some point, I'll actually take a peek at the full set of notes and maybe we'll talk about some of the other things that stood out from today. The other things that we're going to be doing today, in addition to just talking about the Texas football team, kind of where things stand at, oh, we're not at the halfway mark of camp, but we're not that far away from it either. We'll be doing some buy or sell tonight, a big section of that. Someone asked me on Orange Bloods a couple of weeks ago if I would dedicate a section of the show to just taking your buy or sell questions. So we'll be doing that today. Do me a solid, hit the like button on the video. That is always something that helps us out. I don't understand the YouTube algorithms, but the more likes we get, the better things are. And yeah, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, if you're brand new, if you're a Texas football fan, or not, and it's your first time stumbling across the channel, we do live shows all the time. We did one yesterday for the Monday Overreaction show. And we'll do, I think Onwar's doing the Drunk Uncle show tomorrow night. So lots of stuff to jump into. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. The football season is near. You're going to want to be on the channel. We will, if nothing else, I think, entertain you. Gray Man jumps into the chat. Not really a buy or sell question. It says, let's be honest, how bad is the DL again? How many times does VB get pancaked in games this year? The offensive line did not have a good day, from what I've been told. And, look, I'll say this at the very beginning before we get too far into answering questions and talking about practice. Don't overreact to anything that I'm going to say tonight. It is still early in camp to a certain degree. We're still 3 weeks away from, the opening week of the season. Things can change. When we talk about practice reports and things that happen, it's a snapshot. It's a snapshot in time of things that happened on one day or in 1 week or in a couple of days. And it's one of the reasons why I kind of hate practice reports, because you will pass along a note and then it just becomes the thing. It's like, oh, so-and-so had a good practice today. And then for the rest of camp, it's like, well, this guy's going to be awesome because you mentioned that on one day of practice, he was a bit of a standout, right? So let's not do that. However, with the clarifications out of the way, with me warning you not to overreact based on the things that we're hearing, not just from today at practice, but overall through the first week or so of practice, let's just go ahead and get started. And let's just go ahead and say the quiet thing out loud. Issues. Blake, am I in? Am I back? What do we got going on? Okay. I am tap dancing around this. As a matter of fact, before we do anything else, let me just send a note to my wife. To do it on a live show, but at some point do have to be able to communicate. The quarterback play hasn't been good enough yet, and it was not good today. And I don't know what it means, right? Like I have since the beginning of practices last week been thinking about how the quarterback conversation has been different in the first week of this camp from a week or a year ago when there was a lot of, well, who looked better between Casey and Hudson Card. I don't get the sense right now that anybody is happy with the quarterback play. It has to get better. Quinn Ewers has to get better. And if there is a storyline, I think through the first week of camp, if there is a single thing that, if anybody's asking me, tell me about practice, tell me about what's going on, I would say the quarterback position has not been good enough. Apparently, it wasn't good enough today. And you're starting to hear some themes with regards to what's happening day in and day out. And I think on the Quinn Ewers side, I think we all forget sometimes that this is a kid that because he went a year early to Ohio State a year ago, he missed his senior season. It's been a while since he's been in really and truly competitive football mode. It's not happening fully for him yet. I mean, that is the word I'm getting now, multiple days in. It's not about one practice. This is about the totality of practice. There's still a long way to go. Like, I'm going to keep emphasizing this. But if we're having a conversation tonight about where things stand, I think the quarterback play is a major concern at this point. The vibe I'm getting about Quinn Ewers isn't related to his ability as much as he doesn't have, from what I'm hearing, the full scope of the offense down, that the mental side of the game is still a major work in progress. And it's the kind of thing that looms large. If you're talking about over the course of the next few weeks, what has to get better, I think that Quinn Ewers and the mental side of the position is the thing. If you're saying prayers tonight, say your prayers with regards to that being the piece of the puzzle with the team coming along that hasn't happened yet. It's a thing that's worth talking about at this point. With regards to Hudson Card, I'm not hearing a lot of conversation about him. So it's not as if Quinn Ewers is struggling with the mental side, thus impacting his ability to be a standout day in and day out in practice. But it's not as if the moral of the story is Hudson Card leads the quarterback battle. That's not what I'm hearing. All that we're really hearing, for the most part, has been centered on Quinn Ewers and the difficulties that he's had in practice thus far. That does not mean that there's a pro Hudson Card message to pass along. I mean, maybe that exists. I know that, the two guys have been trading off, working with the first team. So the first team offense is still seeing both quarterbacks participate. I think early on, I have not had somebody tell me once yet through the first week of practice that either of these guys has been tearing it up, or, boy, today this guy had a great practice. That's not happening yet. The quarterback position as a whole is a major work in progress. And for all of the discussion about how good this Texas team is going to be, and look, there's no question that the skill talent is sensational on this team. So that's going to help both of these quarterbacks day in and day out so far in practice, though. There's no getting around the fact that the quarterback position has been a major disappointment. In fact, I'm going to come back to the Super Chat question in just a second. Okay? So, Charles, don't think that I've forgotten about you even a little bit. But It's Just Sports 95 asks, what about Murphy? He's actually been the guy through the first week of practice that I've heard the most positive things about with regards to the quarterback position, and that includes today. I mean, he's a guy that's been generating buzz. I don't almost like a participation trophy, right? Like, oh, the other two guys are vying for the job, but Malik Murphy's also a guy that flashed a little bit. Today, he's the name at the quarterback position that I heard the most with regards to impressing. I don't know what that means. Like, I'm not at practice, and I haven't completely soaked in all of the information with regards to today's practice and what it means to hear that he's looked good in practice. But I heard negative things today with regards to the quarterback position, and I heard negative things today with regards to the offensive line. The offensive line had a bad day. And with pads coming on, and I heard that the first team offensive line really had a bad day. So for those of you who have been flying the flag of freshman offensive linemen getting on the field, the results of pads coming on today probably would reinforce that feeling. It sounds like there's an ebb and flow of practice day in and day out, where some days the offense has the better of the days, sometimes the defense is better. It sounds like today that there were some struggles on the offensive side of the ball with quarterback decision making and with the offensive line and their physicality and just at the point of attack holding up against the defensive line that they faced today. We'll get into some buy or sell questions in a second. We'll talk about kind of position by position what we're hearing with regards to this Texas football team a week into practice. Let me attack this first super chat question. Charles asks, thanks you guys for the content. It makes my long drives more enjoyable. If Quinn is QB1, what are your stat predictions? Feels like a really hard thing I want to get, by the way, thank you, Charles. I'm glad that it does make the long drives more enjoyable. And we thank you for watching the content. I've been thinking 3,000 yards, 30 touchdowns-ish for Quinn Ewers over the course of a 12-game season. I'll keep it there. But there's no getting around the fact it's hard to talk stats right now when he's not performing at an extremely high level in practice. Quinn Ewers isn't performing at a level you want your starting quarterback to perform at. And so how do you predict numbers for that? I mean, I think at this point, the thing that you would predict is that I've been wondering about turnovers with Quinn and what should we expect on the turnover front. I remember Colt McCoy's first season in Austin in 2006 after the redshirt season. He was that first season, he almost went to New York as a Heisman finalist in part because he didn't turn the ball over. It was like 4 or 5 interceptions on the season that year. And then in his season number 2 in 2007, he had like 20 turnovers. I think 16 picks, something crazy like that, maybe even higher. And it speaks to the inconsistency sometimes you get from young quarterbacks. Based on what we're hearing is taking place in practice right now, I think there are concerns about if Quinn Ewers throws 30 touchdowns, does he throw 12 picks? Does he turn the ball over a couple of times on the average a game? And what does that mean from a one-loss standpoint? It's hard to say. It's hard to say. And I think the thing that you'll hang your hat on is it's early. The talent is there. I mean, it's not like anybody's saying that Quinn Ewers, oh, you know what? The arm is overrated. The skill set is overrated. That is not something that I've heard a single person say. What we're hearing is that the mental side of the position is a major work in progress. It was again today. And I think at some point we have to have an open conversation about what we're hearing is taking place in practice when we had heard really starting 2 or 3 days ago, really yeah, that's about right. Kind of into the weekend that this was an issue, that the quarterback position and Quinn in particular, that there were mental issues that knowing the offense, like really knowing the offense, digesting the offense in a way that we think starting quarterbacks typically have the offense digested. That's been a major point of contention and things that we've heard. And, you know, there's 3 weeks to go until the season starts. And so some of that can certainly be improved, but it'd be difficult, I think, at this point to have incredibly high expectations based on what we're hearing thus far. A lot of improvement has to take place, and it would help if the offensive line performs better. Yeah, I have not heard that the struggles today of the two things were connected, but I don't know that they're mutually exclusive either. Uh, Buy or sell, the quarterback decision is less stressful largely because Sark doesn't have to worry about one guy transferring out. Added bonus is if there is a third string that is viable. Absolutely buy. I mean, that is when I talk about how different the conversation is in camp right now versus what it was a year ago. The stress of Casey Thompson leaving potentially if he didn't win the job was really high. I mean, there was some real thought that Charles Wright, could have been in a situation where he has to be the backup quarterback last year, and now you're looking at a situation where I think everybody feels really good that Hudson Card's going to stick around. Malik Murphy isn't going anywhere, so you've got depth in that room that gives them optionality that didn't exist a year ago. So that's an absolute buy. It is less stressful, but I also felt like last year the word out of camp was that the quarterbacks were performing pretty well and that it was a matter of which guy's pretty well was better than the other pretty well. Doesn't completely feel like that's what's going on right now. The quarterback position as a whole just has to get better. And it's really as simple as that. Hank asks, if I had to make a record prediction, what would it be? I'm sticking with 8-4. Nothing. I'm not changing my long-term views of this season based on some notes and information from the first couple of days in practice, through the first week even. But nothing is budging me off of 8-4. We were doing the Monday overreaction show yesterday, and I wondered aloud with Anwar if the over and under number was correct. That we've all kind of settled on 8.5 as the correct number for over and under this year. And I wonder if it's not 7.5. And I'm still saying 8. My answer doesn't change. But Texas, the schedule's difficult. It's not the strongest thing in the world, but there are a lot of challenging games on that schedule. I mean, in fact, it's ranked as one of the top 5 schedules in terms of difficulty in the entire country. It's hard for me to budge off of 8 right now, and that's with the quarterback position being pretty damn good. And I don't know that we're there yet. Savion, let's see, we got a question. Savion Red seems to be a nice surprise when you watch him play in person. He is special. I'll say again, I think he's the biggest sleeper of all the freshmen. I know that he was getting some love from Jordan Whittington today after practice in the discussions there. Kind of surprising. My thing with Savion Red is I feel like he's a bit of a tweener between the running back position and the wide receiver position. It will be interesting to see how he's used. It will be interesting to see how he develops, and what it means and what it translates to in the offense with his skill set. Certainly not a bad thing that he's already receiving mentions from his peers at the wide receiver position. I'll still say slow down. And really that's probably a good message for everything. Everything that I'm saying tonight, slow down a caution sign should be blinking. Let's not get too high off of anything that's happened so far, and let's not get too low, but let's also not ignore that that these issues are taking place specifically on the offensive side of the ball. We got a buy or sell question from Brandon, who's got a tramp stamp of Paul Assassin's monkey on the line in the Alabama game. Buy or sell, or what is this? If it ain't Monday, y'all don't overreact, fellas. We got this. Hashtag in Sark we trust. Look, this was a 5-7 team a year ago, and we've jumped. What am I sitting here talking about? Whether or not the over and under for wins should be 7.5 or 8.5. There's a massive amount of benefit of the doubt that's being given. And getting to that place where it's like, oh, is it 3 games of improvement or 4 games of improvement that we'll see in the one-loss column? I think the first week of camp is just a reminder that this is a process. You can't cheat the process. And, this is a team that's still growing up. It's growing up at the quarterback position. It's growing up on the offensive line. It's growing up on the defensive side of the ball where guys that didn't play well a year ago, they got to play better today, tomorrow, all season long. And all of those things have to happen at once without fail in order for this team to be a top 25, top 20 type team that could challenge to play in a Big 12 championship game. Grayman says, this is really weird to hear about Quinn. I don't know why. I mean, he's a young kid. He's a young kid that because of what the demands are at the position, this is what we heard from him at Ohio State. I mean, if we're really going to keep it a buck, the reports of how he performed with the scout team in year 1 at Ohio State, he wasn't blowing the doors off. So now he's in his first set of fall workouts after his first semester at camp. I will say this. I'm a little bit surprised to hear that, that his issues aren't strictly about decision making, that there is a totality of concern about where he is with his mastery of the offense. I'm a little surprised that that's an issue because it doesn't feel like in all of the quarterbacks that I've covered over the decades at this point, that's not been a theme with a lot of them. The quarterbacks are typically such junkies in the playbook that they have everything down. And it just sounds like I think preparation is going to continue to be a big thing for Quinn. I think application of what they're learning and what they're talking about in the quarterback room after practices and before practices is going to be a big deal over the course of the next few weeks, certainly going into the season. Everybody inside the program needs to see more from Quinn with regards to this mastery of what the expectations are of the offense. And without it, this becomes a little bit of a limited offense. Without it, what you can ask of your starting quarterback becomes more limited. And I think the expectation is that this Texas offense at the quarterback position is better than it was a year ago with Casey Thompson. And yet we're not there yet. I mean, we were talking about this again. I hate to keep referencing the Monday Overreaction show, and you can check that out on the Orange Bloods Texas football channel in the video section. It's from yesterday. But Casey was the number 26 ranked quarterback in the country in terms of passing efficiency. They weren't terrible at the quarterback position a year ago. They're looking to be better. And to be better means from 26, you're talking about top 20, top 15. They're not there right now. They're just not. And I would make that mental note. Like if you're thinking about the upcoming season, the quarterback position is simply a bigger question mark than I think a lot of people want to digest. And it's time to digest it. Because again, it's not necessarily a Quinn Ewers issue that's taking place here. I'm the former president of the Hudson Card fan club. a year ago, I was expecting big things from Hudson. I'm not hearing that he's lighting it up while Quinn is struggling. The quarterback position as a whole, things have been very quiet around that position. Most of the talk that we're hearing is around Quinn. And I would say that that's because Hudson's probably not tearing it up, at least not at a level um, that's worth communicating and discussing with people inside the program who obviously are heavily invested in all of this. It's just sports. 95 says, let's wait until next Monday to overreact. Completely fair. You know, it's on one hand, we're having a real conversation about the real state of things right now. And then on the other, we definitely need to be saying there's time. It's early. Today was just the first day in practice. Tomorrow, the offense could go out and strike back themselves, and Quinn Ewers can throw 3 touchdown passes. And then all of a sudden, it's like, ha! Catch! Look at you. You were overreacting. You were talking about the need for the quarterback position to get better. And today I saw a whole bunch of highlights where Quinn Ewers was tearing it up. First of all, let's hope that happens. Let's hope that in a week from now, we can all look back on this conversation and go, man, if there's anything more worthless than early discussion from things that are happening in practice, I don't know what is. But on the same token, we want to talk football. We want to talk about where, we want to have a real football conversation about a thing that everybody is passionate about. And today, this is kind of what it looks like. Mark says, since this is a very young team with a quarterback that we don't know what to expect play and bad O-line play and bad secondary, what do you see the Longhorns record being this year? Mark, I'm sticking with 8-4. I'm sticking with 8-4. I am not going with Tony's 11-1. I'm just not at this point. This is a team. I think the talent that it has in the skill positions greatly matters, and I think that cream will rise to the top on Saturdays. And I expect this team to have a good season. What is good is a bit subjective. 8-4 means this team improved by 3 wins, not including the bowl game. And I think that would be a good season. I keep looking at this season as a springboard to 2023. And what last year was supposed to be, it's the thing that I talked about with Anwar throughout the summer, throughout the offseason last year. What you wanted to get out of last season was the ability to answer a lot of questions so that you could surge into this season with experience at the quarterback position, that you go through the growing pains, right? The thought process would have been Hudson Card struggles in year 1 to some degree, but boy, he's gone on the road. He's played Oklahoma. He's done all of these games and been through the trials and tribulations, and in year number 2, liftoff. Well, that didn't happen a year ago. And inside of a 5-7 season, what happened at the quarterback position was one of easily the biggest disappointments. And I say that even though Casey Thompson finishes the year statistically with a pretty good year, he ain't here anymore. So that didn't do Texas any good. They're right back at the drawing board with having to insert a quarterback into the equation and have them go through almost all of the firsts. I mean, the only first at this point that you wouldn't say Hudson Card would have to go through is he's made his first career start. He's made his first career start on the road. There's still a whole bunch of firsts beyond that, and Quinn has them all. So I think if you can go 8-4 next year, you can talk yourself into this season being a springboard where you're legitimately competing for a Big 12 championship. For me, it's just too big of a leap to make in just a single season. Brandon jumps back into the super chat and says, oh, we already did this one. Sorry, Brandon. I'm a little bit behind in the chat. Let me see if I've missed any more. We'll do this one. Another super chat question from Jay. We know most scenarios that could get PK fired this season, but what happens to PK if we win 8 or 9 games, but the score is 55-50, 48-45, 63-55, etc.? I don't think he'll return. I mean, That's not good. I mean, it would be. I wouldn't complain in an 8-9 win season, really. Although we'll definitely complain. But by hook or crook, you can get to 8 or 9 wins. I think that's a good season, and I think Steve Sarkisian would chop your hand off right now. He'd bite it if you offered him 9 wins right now, even with the texture being a lot of shootouts. If it plays out like that, though, it's hard for me to think going into what would be a really important year 3 that PK would be back. The defense, because those type of numbers are right in line or worse than what we're talking about from last season. And at some point, they've got to get better on that side of the ball. Juan jumps in with another super chat comment. Is the defense looking better now with Gary Patterson in the house? It was better today. The Pats came on today. The defensive line probably had now that they could totally let loose, it sounds like the defensive line kicked the offensive line's ass. Now, I think, are concerns about the secondary, and there probably should be. That is, even your returning guys, Deshaun Jameson wasn't great a year ago. Anthony Cook is at safety, having made the move from nickel, and I think that that's still a work in progress. It's not like he's in threat of losing a job or anything like that. But I think, again, work in progress. You hear that the young guys are still young guys. And so I don't know that there's an anchor in the secondary. And look, I don't care what the coaches say. The linebacker position is a concern for me. I mean, Jalen Ford looking better in the offseason does nothing for me, truly. He was okay last season. He wasn't a standout. Same with DeMarvion Overshown, who is going to have some pass rush responsibilities. And maybe he ends up being the guy that can get you a half dozen sacks this year. That, if you told me right now that DeMarvion Overshown could have a half dozen sacks, I'd snap your hand off for that. So I think the defense is going to look better. Gary Patterson has definitely been a help in that regard. But the Jimmies and the Joes have not changed much. And it will be on the shoulders of the coaches to put this team in a position where the defense is better. It's going to have to I don't even know what this means. Someone asked me, do I think Quinn is drinking from a fire hydrant? No. Someone will have to explain the fire hydrant comment. I think he's a young guy. And I think that his ranking and his recruiting pedigree make us think that he can cheat the process as a young quarterback. And, when Hudson struggled against Arkansas and struggled, I don't know that does it justice. But I went back and I looked at the way, Aaron Rodgers in his first season at Cal had a 9 for 34 game where he threw for like 50 yards and a pick and was just truly awful. Peyton Manning had that kind of game. Tom Brady, when he was a young player in his first season as a starter, the best quarterbacks that have ever played the game, right? I don't bring this thing up. I don't bring those names up to say that Quinn Ewers or Hudson Card belong in the same sentence with guys that are going to be not just Hall of Fame players, but are Mount Rushmore players at the quarterback position. I bring those names up and those struggles to simply point out the GOATs, the best players we've ever seen play quarterback. When they were young players in college, they had struggles. It transferred over to the games. And, Vince struggled. Major struggled. Chris Sims struggled. Colt McCoy struggled. I just mentioned earlier in the show, you go back to Colt McCoy's sophomore season, I think it was 17 interceptions and 20 turnovers. Like, he struggled. And that was when he was making his 20th start and his 21st start. We're talking about a quarterback in Hudson Card, who I don't think is going to be the starter, who has a couple of starts under his belt. And you're talking about a guy in Quinn Ewers that has none. At some point this season, there's going to be an oh no game from the quarterback position. I can't tell you what game it's going to happen in, and I'm not even talking about Alabama. I'm talking about part of young quarterbacks growing up is that they have to go through a little bit of the fire, and that just hasn't happened yet. So this team will be better off when the quarterback position has gone through that, survived it, and is better for it. But we're not completely there. Rand says, do you think there's a potential that he could be a gamer? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the concern, again, isn't ability. The concern is the mental mastery of the offense. And there are a lot of implications, right? What decisions do you make? What are all of the players on the field doing? You know, when you are a starting quarterback at a school like Texas, you can't just know what your job is. You have to know the job of every player on the field. And then you have to know the job of every player on the field based on the scheme that they're facing and what the opponent does. And if there's a stunt with the defensive line and they do this and a linebacker's coming off the edge, what does that, like all of these things that are rapid fire mental decisions, that's part of what I think they're worried about. I don't think that automatically improves in games. But look, Kyler Murray will tell you, I don't really need to study. I just go out there and I perform. I'm an artist and I perform. I'm like a jazz musician. Could it be like that? Sure. And Rand says he's had some great throws in practice in the spring. That's not the issue. Again, let's not let this turn into a conversation about his capableness, right? From a capability standpoint, he's got the talent to be the first pick in the draft in the 2024 NFL draft. But there are multiple pieces of the game at the quarterback position that matter. And that's where Quinn Ewers is still trying to fully develop in all areas. The thing that we're hearing the most behind the scenes is the thing that he needs to improve on the most is the mental side. Simple as that. And, you know, the good news is it's as simple as that. The bad news is that's not an insignificant small detail. Chris says, when you get in pads, the game speeds up for the quarterbacks. They have to get their eyes used to finding lanes. We will be fine. Chris, don't disagree with you. I would say, though, that it wasn't just an issue today, that today was the first day in practice, but the theme of what I'm talking about today at the quarterback position, and specifically with Quinn Ewers, is something that's existed throughout all of camp. So, you know, quite frankly, if with what you said, you're right. And if it had just been the first day in pads, I don't even think you'd be hearing me say this right now. I probably would keep it to myself. It's a theme. It's happening every practice. I think from what we heard was exasperated a little bit today. One of our sources indicated that Sarkisian was pretty frustrated today by everything about today's practice. His expectations for that offense are much better, and it just sounds like that side of the ball today could have been a lot better. Let me see if we've got any more super chat comments. We do. Charles says, chances of Bijan winning the Heisman, I don't know, man. 5%? I don't think they're high. I think that part of winning the Heisman is you have to be on a really, really, really good team. That's not what Texas is right now. It's mostly a quarterback award. And, you know, what would need to happen for Bijan to win the Heisman? 2,000 yards? I think at a minimum, we'd be talking about 2,000 all-purpose yards. So 1,700 yards rushing, 300 yards receiving, 20 touchdowns. Like, you get into that area, and I think he's got a chance to be invited to the Heisman ceremony. But, man, you could be invited to the Heisman ceremony and still only have a 5% chance of winning. I think Bryce Young is the favorite. I think We know he's going to put up sick computer type PlayStation numbers. And, I think Alabama obviously will be a top 5 team all season long. So I think he's got to be the favorite. CJ Stroud is another guy. Ohio State's going to be good. That guy's going to put up numbers. It's a quarterback award. And in order for Bijan to win, you would need, I think, the competition to decline. One of the things about when Ricky won the Heisman in 98, one of the things about that season was that he really didn't have a quarterback that pushed him. I mean, Michael Bishop ends up being a guy that's in New York with him, but Bishop and Kansas State, first of all, Kansas State didn't win the Big 12 that year, and that might have changed the way. If they beat A&M in the Big 12 championship game that year, maybe he gets a bump. I think Ricky wins the Heisman no matter what, but he didn't have a record-breaking quarterback that he had to compete with, which allowed for him to win the award despite the fact that, he has the games against UCLA and in Kansas State early in the season where the numbers weren't great. But then he gets to play Nebraska later in the season. He gets his 100 yards in that game. They that year had obviously the moment against Texas A&M where he breaks the all-time record. There were moments throughout the season for Ricky which allowed him to catch up. For Bijan, I think to have a 10%, what I say, 5%. I think for it to be more than that, a lot of things have to come together. And all of those things needing to come together is why I think his Heisman chances are actually pretty low. Chris says plus 1,500. I think that may be where they are. I'd probably have it a little bit higher than that, quite frankly. Let's see. Let me see what else we got. Brandon wants me to quit saying his name. I think of that dang monkey on my back, literally. Brandon, you're safe right now. So I think that, and you said that in the super chat. So quit saying my name every time I hear it. I think the monkey on my back, literally laugh my ass off. I won't say the other word. Hook 'em. Brandon, you have to know that when the week of the Alabama game comes up, we're going to be talking about the monkey on your back, the tramp stamp that you said that you're going to get if Texas beats Alabama. It's going to be a major theme that entire week. So just FYI, be prepared for that. Gray Man says fire hydrant means that it's just coming too fast. Yeah, probably, Gray Man. Although I think a lot of this is about get your ass into the playbook and master it and know all of the responsibilities. And I am getting the sense that there's some frustration right now that's not what's happened. So I think that one of the things that will serve Quinn Ewers really well throughout the rest of this camp and throughout the rest of this season as it gets started is that he just throw himself into learning the nuances of what the Sarkisian is asking from the quarterback position in this offense. I think there's some frustration right now that it's not as advanced as they would have hoped it would be, and it needs to get there. Because I think he's going to be the starting quarterback, but I don't know how well he holds on to the job if this talk that we're having tonight, if it prolongs itself into the season. And by no means does that have to happen. And a week from now, maybe the light switch comes on. You guys know I love to talk about a good light switch. It can happen. I think that it needs to happen. Simple as that. Simple as that. Let's see. What else do we got here? Rand, you're active tonight in the chat. I love that. Do you think with how much Oklahoma's lost and everything they changed, do you believe they have a real shot at the playoffs like that? No, they don't. No. I don't think any team in the Big 12 has a shot at the playoff. If I'm being completely honest, we talked about this yesterday in the Monday Overreaction show. It would not surprise me if both teams that play in the Big 12 championship game this year have multiple losses in conference play. It wouldn't surprise me. There's a world out there where I think a team can lose one game, and then they would be the best team in the regular season and definitely secure a spot. But I think this is a team without great teams, but it is a league with, I think, potentially a lot of pretty good teams. And when you see Oklahoma, Baylor, and Oklahoma State all bunched together in the rankings between 9 and 11 like they were yesterday, that's the voters saying they don't know what the hell to do with the Big 12. I think Texas is going to be a good team when it's all said and done. I think Kansas State's going to be dangerous. I think Texas Tech has a chance, and TCU. Those are teams that are capable. What I mean when I say that is that on any given Saturday, especially if they're playing at home, I don't think any of the teams in the Big 12 are so good that they couldn't lose in Fort Worth, for instance, in a game this season. So yeah, I think that I don't see anybody in the playoff. I'd probably put a Big 12 team playing in the playoff right now slightly better than Bijan's chances of winning the Heisman, but very, very unlikely. Cody says that we've never had these weapons. I think he's just talking about on the offensive side of the ball in general. I tend to agree. I think we've seen a running back room as good as the one that Texas has. It's been a while, but you go back to 2005 with Selvin Young, Ramonce Taylor, Jamal Charles. That was an elite running back room. I think Texas has that. Bijan Robinson's the best running back in the country. So, and then I think Roschon's the guy that's going to play on Sundays. And I look at the depth in the running back room, and then you look at the depth that they have at the wide receiver room. I tend to agree. It's even worth putting in all caps. Texas has never had these weapons on the offensive side of the ball, but there are still question marks. And if your quarterback play is and your offensive line is and your defense is what does it mean to be elite with your skill guys if all of that exists? And oh, by the way, special teams, yikes. But you mentioned Oklahoma. If Texas was really good, none of the teams in the Big 12 would matter. They're just not really good yet. And the Oklahoma game is on a neutral field. And, Oklahoma State this year, it's just, I think this is a difficult schedule. I think low key, the Texas Tech game at the end of September is a game that has a chance to define this season because they're going to lose to Alabama. We can just say that. All right. Let's not argue amongst ourselves. That's likely to happen. I think they beat UTSA kind of the same way they beat Louisiana a year ago. That is a level of college football that I think against the skill talent that Texas has, and those types of teams can't really out physical. They typically don't. They typically lack the size, strength, and physicality of even a team like Texas, which I don't think anybody would suggest is great up front. We saw what they did to Louisiana. I think they win that game. So you're 2-1 and you're going to Lubbock. And I think that what happens in that game might decide whether or not it's an up and down season all season long, or has Texas grown enough by the quarter mark of the season that they start to elevate their play to a level that's so much higher than it was at the beginning of the month. I think it's absolutely possible, but I think that Tech game will be a fourth quarter game, and we will learn a lot about these Texas Longhorns when they go to Lubbock early in the season. Someone asks in the chat, any chance we can flip OU commit Petaway? I don't think so. I have heard that I mentioned on Orange Bloods that there are whispers of a flip candidate out there for the Longhorns right now. Don't feel completely comfortable getting into specifics right now, but it's not Petaway. And I think they feel really good about Jalen Hell. I think once they get a commitment from Jalen Hell, I think your wide receiver position is probably, I don't want to say it's set in stone. You probably would never say that with a Steve Sarkisian offense. And given that he took 3 wide receivers in the transfer, he's always going to want to take a lot of wide receivers. But I think that Petaway is unlikely at this point. It will be interesting to see what Oklahoma does, though, because it's going to be hard for them to get a long-term wide receivers coach at this point in the season. So that hire probably takes place. They'll have an interim guy come in, I would think, and then they'll make a change in December, January to hire who they ultimately want to be the guy long term. But that'll hurt them in recruiting. I mean, if they're trying to retain Petaway, they're going to have to do so without him probably knowing who his position coach is definitely going to be going into next season. And I think that could be really difficult. But I don't think that Texas is ultimately going to be a factor there. I did find it interesting that Jonte Cook seemed so opposed to just the idea of it when mentioned on social media. I think yesterday was when I saw it. I might feel a little bit different if those guys were pushing for that, but I don't think you want to upset the apple cart of what will be one of the better wide receiver positions in the entire country. Let's see, what else do we got here? I'm trying to catch up on the chat. Are there any super chat questions that wow, I'm way behind on the chat. Okay, I'm caught up now. Norwooding is saying that OU will be fine. We'll see. Fine can mean a lot of things. Is fine good enough? We'll see. Brian with the buy or sell questions. By the way, guys, get your buy or sell questions in. I will take as many as I can. I mean, I will just start taking buy or sell questions right now. Super chat or no super chat. Buy or sell, you'd rather have, is that 3? 3 freshmen starting on the offensive line game 1 than you would the same line as last year. Ooh. That's a good question. Buy. That offensive line last year, its upside is limited. So, yeah. The funny thing is, when you say that, I don't even know who the line. I think I want Hayden Connor. I think Hayden Connor is one of the 5 best offensive linemen in the program. So you'd want 3 offensive linemen, and I think one of my 2 might be Hayden Connor. Junior Angelau has just been a guy for me so far. I love Jake Majors. He's a personal favorite of mine, but he's just been a guy so far. He lacks the size that you want. Ideally, he's got to get better. So 3 offensive linemen, Hayden Connor in the mix. I don't even know truly who my 5th guy would be, who I would favor in that scenario. I heard that left tackle was a problem today, which is probably a sign that Kelvin Banks will be heading to that first team offensive line sooner rather than later. Pads came on today, and I know that Alex has got the practice report posted over at Orange Bloods right now. So if you haven't read the practice report, go check that out over at orangebloods.com. We've talked about a number of things related to today's practice, but we haven't gone quite as in depth as we'll see on the practice report that's just been posted over at Orange Bloods. Ryan says Banks, moving left to right, Banks, Connor, Angelau, Campbell, Williams. I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all. I think it's imperative they get their 5 best guys on the field. That they've got some optionality with Angelau potentially being able to play center means that Jake Majors got to be really good. And that's a good thing. Jake Majors is now at a point in his career where the light switch and the real productivity should be coming on strong. And if it's not, that's a problem. John says buy or sell. Bijan, where did it go? Sorry. Bijan will average over 7 yards per carry this season. Sell. No. I don't know that I would say he'll average over 6 yards per carry this season. He didn't a year ago. I don't know that I'm yet seeing enough. And this isn't a Bijan issue. This is that offensive line. I don't know is good enough yet to be able to say that Bijan 7 yards per carry. That's pretty ridiculous. Mr. Norman Jackson, buy or sell. Jay Witt last over 6 games before he gets hurt. I'm not going to let you put that bad juju on Jordan Whittington. I'm going to say buy all season long. All season long. He plays the whole season. Not going to let you put that juju on him. I think that this will be the year that Jordan Whittington puts a full season in. Tracy Jackson doesn't have a buy or sell question, but does have a question. Is Jake Majors not a good center? I think he's okay. I think he's pretty good. But the bar isn't pretty good. And I think being very good, forget about great, forget about being elite, is he very good? I don't think that we would say that at this point. Gray Man with a buy or sell question says 12 and 20 personnel gets used more to run the ball if Quinn or Ewers can't get going. I think you meant Quint or Card. Well, definitely. I mean, yes. Buy or sell. Jatavian Sanders has more than 7 touchdowns. Sell. But 3 or 4 in year 1 is a really good starting point. The tight end position isn't a massive position of usage in the passing game in a Sarkisian-based offense. So I think now you could see Sanders turn into a red zone target where maybe the overall volume of catches this season that he makes is 20, and maybe 7 of them are touchdowns. And we know what that is. Very carrying Keith Cash back in the day where, you're throwing the ball up and physicality is the name of the game. But there's a lot of mouths to feed in this passing game. 7 for me feels a lot more than I would expect at this point. Ryan says PK, his DC in 2023. I'll sell that at this point until I see it. Hard for me to believe it. Another buy or sell question. The Texas offense can score on the Bama defense. Buy. I think Texas will score some points. They won't score enough. But yeah, this Texas offense can score on the Bama defense. However, at this point, this Bama defense is going to turn this Texas offense over. And I think the real worry at that game right now is that Texas wouldn't be able to not make mistakes against a Bama defense that will bring the best 2 pass rushers at a minimum that this team will see all season long. Sarney asks, buy or sell, Texas will end up with a top 3 recruiting class. It's going to be close. I'll say buy. I'll say I don't think they're going to have the nation's number 1 recruiting class. I think Anthony Hill was a big piece. If that was going to happen, I think Anthony Hill needs to be in this recruiting class in order for that level to occur. But yeah, if I had to make a prediction today, Texas finishes 3rd in the country in recruiting. Yeah. Jay says, they said that about LSU and that defense was elite. Buy or sell. Who's this coming from? I can't tell. My eyes aren't. Oh, is this Mr. Jackson again? The defense is a top 50 defense at the end of the year. And if so, how many wins does that put us at? I think top 50 puts you at 8-4, maybe 9-3. But I'm saying that I think this Texas offense is going to be top 10, top 15 in the country. Maybe I'm saying that because the skill position guys are so talented. But boy, I don't know that Texas has the quarterback play right now for that to occur. The question is the defense a top 50 defense at the end of the year? Sell. Ooh, and don't get mad at me for saying that. Tyler Justice says, buy or sell, both Worthy and Nayor eclipse 1,000 yards on the season. I'm going to say sell because I think Jordan Whittington's going to be in the mix as well. I think Worthy's going to have a monster season. I think Nayor and Whittington and the rest of that wide receiving group are going to be splitting up the numbers in such a way it will be difficult to get to 1,000 yards. Rand asks, buy or sell. Texas finds a way to flip Anthony Hill or gets David Hicks. Sell. They're not going to get David Hicks at this point, and I can't say that Texas is going to flip Anthony Hill at this point. I don't think in the end, I think Texas inside thought that decision was closer than it probably was. That Anthony Hill flipped so quickly after the dead period and is an A&M commit right now, instead of even waiting to see Texas go into the season, I think Texas has more work to do than I probably thought. Like, I won't just deny that I thought that was closer. My Texas sources believe that Texas was in a much better position with Anthony Hill than I think they were. And the proof of that is in the pudding of an A&M commitment that he didn't have to give in the way that he gave it. I think it speaks to just how strong he was leaning towards Texas A&M over the course of the last month or so. Buy or sell, there are less than 2 games that make you wish you had hair so you could pull it out in frustration. Sell. Less than 2? Hard for me to say that. Buy or sell, I like this question. JD says, buy or sell Damon Wilson and Toviano both commit. I'll sell that. I don't think Texas is a leader with Damon Wilson yet. He's going to visit. You know, the thing is, there's a sense that Alabama and Georgia are really the top 2 for Damon Wilson. Texas is clearly in the mix. He is going to visit Ohio State that first Saturday in September. The question will be, will Texas be able to bring him in for the Alabama game? Kind of a dangerous game to bring him in for. The atmosphere you think would be really good, although depending on how early that game is, it could be both be problematic or a thing that works in your favor. I'd love to see the Alabama game be a night game. I think that enhances Texas's chances of victory to just for that electric of an atmosphere. But Alabama being one of the teams that Damon Wilson is really looking at, him being at the Alabama game has a chance to do as much for Alabama as it does for Texas. Toviano continues to be a guy that I think is definitely in play more than we all would have thought a month or two ago, but I can't buy those 2 guys together. Another buy or sell question from the Super Chat. Thank you, Eddie Lee. Buy or sell, do you believe in these coaches get real? No, not yet. I don't. It's probably not a real positive thing to say, but these coaches led this program to 5-7 a year ago, an absolute disaster of a season. And I am not about giving unearned benefit of the doubt as best I can. I would love for you to ask me 6 weeks into the season, Eddie, come back. You don't even have to ask it in the Super Chat. Ask it the week of the Oklahoma game. Do I believe in these coaches at the midway point in this season? At the beginning, I'm not sold. I've already said in this chat, I think that based on my expectations for the defense, that there will be a defensive coordinator change after this season. I think that's a conversation that's kind of hard to ignore. I think I believe in these offensive coaches, but in the staff as a whole, I think that sorry, I just saw Brandon's buy or sell question. Let me pull this one up here. Buy or sell, I really need to think about a design of my monkey tramp stamp tattoo. No, Brandon, you don't. If Texas, because here's the thing. If Texas beats Alabama, for those that don't know, Brandon said yesterday in the chat and then doubled down by saying it on Twitter that if Texas beats Alabama, he's going to get a Pole Assassin's monkey tramp stamp tattoo, which is both the funniest and most absurd thing I've ever heard in my entire life. If that happens, that doesn't mean you have to get it the next day. Doesn't even mean that you have to get it the next week. It just means you have to get it. So I think what happens if Texas beats Alabama starting that next week, you got to let some people design some options for you. Like, we need there to be options. Maybe somebody could draw a monkey with like a banana, but like a Vince jersey. We got to let people get creative. I think, Brandon, at that point, you turn it over to the artists, and you don't just. I don't think you need to worry about that. If by some chance that happens, let's worry about that after the fact. Let's see, another super chat question. OB will soon be making more nervous. We'll be making more revenue off the YouTube channel than the site subscriptions. Define soon. I think no, not soon. I mean, God, it sounds great. We're a ways away from that. I think you'd have to have 100,000 subscribers. We're a tenth of the way through that. I think the goal with the YouTube channel is that over the next half decade, it becomes viable enough that it's a big piece of what we're doing financially with everything that we do at Orange Bloods. But right now, the overwhelming subscription revenue comes off of the site. And the idea that we'd be making more off of YouTube, Blake is producing the show right now. And he's kind of in charge of ads and sales and all of those things. Oh, man. What you just described is like a wet dream come true for Blake. The idea that we're making that much money off the YouTube channel. But yeah, man, I hope that, I'd love to be.
Like the video and subscribe to the channel, folks.
Well, there you go. Hey, in order for us to get there, Blake, I thought you were going to come in and, validate how happy you would be should we start making more money off of YouTube than the website itself. But yes, like the channel, subscribe to the channel. That does help us take steps towards getting there. Where did Paxton say? Players are watching this catch. Keep quiet. We aren't coaches. I'm going to be me, and we're going to keep it real. And that's what you're always going to be able to take to the bank with Orange Bloods. There are sites and there are channels out there in that internet world where there are deals made with the coaching staff and the university where you hook us up and take care of us, and we will hook you up and take care of you. And going all the way back to the Mac Brown days, that is not what I'm about. Because if I was about that, I wouldn't have shown up at the top of the show and said, quarterback position right now is a problem. Because that ain't what the coaches want you to hear. That ain't what anybody wants to hear. But that is what's happening. And when you log on to the Orange Bloods YouTube channel, when you go over to Orange Bloods, you're going to get the deal. You're going to get the real deal. You're not going to get manufactured notes that are made in the name of protecting people. I mean, transparency is what I would look. Here's the thing. If I look at what it is that I want from the teams that I love, so I'm a Liverpool soccer fan, love the Dallas Cowboys, I love the Philadelphia 76ers. I have my places that I go to get my information. I don't want them blowing smoke up my ass. I want to know what's going on. That is forever the quest, to tell you what's going on, not to tell you what people want you to think is going on. So I shrug at this point to find a real answer other than to say, I don't care who watches. I always assume that players are watching. I always assume that administrative people are watching. Of course they are. I hear about that all the time. And it's been like that going back to the very beginning. I still remember Michael Griffin being insanely upset with me because I wrote a note in the practice report that Marcus, his brother, he'd gotten like trucked in a scrimmage. And like Marcus Griffin was a really good player. He was on the field in the national championship game against USC. he had a moment in practice where somebody just ran his ass over, and I wrote about it. And like Michael got mad at me and called me out in a press setting. But what am I going to do? Not write about it? Not write what's happening? Not tell you guys the actual scoop? It's not what I'm about. Brandon says buy or sell. Oh, God. Bobby B is a creeper. Never mind. That's a buy or sell. Had to ask. I'm not going to talk about Bobby. I mean, he and I have our history. There's a lot there to unpack that I could never do in a YouTube setting. The internet is big enough for the University of Texas to have multiple websites that cover the University of Texas and do good jobs. And I'm focused on Orange Bloods, and I'm focused on what we do and what we report and the quality of our professionalism. Everybody else can just worry about themselves. You know, I hope they have good nights. I hope they're having good months. I hope they're perfectly happy people. I don't wish bad things onto anyone. Let's see. Buy or sell. OU loses to Nebraska. Ooh. Sell. I got to get until Nebraska shows a little more than they have. I'll give Oklahoma that benefit of the doubt. However, that's a game Casey Thompson can win. Let's see. Buy or sell. Oh boy. Will Stone performs as good or better than Cameron Dicker? Tyler, no. Unless you mean like Will Stone in 2026 performs as good or better than maybe now. No, just I can't go there yet. Cameron Dicker is really good. Cameron Dicker's at an NFL training camp right now for a reason. Cameron Dicker was really good on kickoffs, and he was very dependable on field goals. Will Stone's never kicked in a game with more than like a couple of hundred people present. So, if he performs as good or better than Cameron Dicker this season, that's a major question being answered in a really positive way. I can't say that first week of August. Buy or sell. Oh, Kevin, don't do this. If Texas starts off 3-0, would that mean CPP? No. Kevin, maybe you're just getting into the chat. This team isn't that good yet. Quarterback position is struggling in practice. The offensive line was bad today. The defense is a question mark. Special teams is a question mark. This team starts 3-0. They could lose in Lubbock and just as easily. The delusions of grandeur, like I got to walk you guys off that ledge. There's a way to enjoy this season. The college football playoff being in your vernacular, don't do that to yourself. What on earth would make you even ask such a question? Maybe it's because one of the coaches in the coaches poll gave Texas a first place vote, which is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. Fascinated to see how long if that continues through week one. Let's see. Like Marco says, 8-4 is a joke. Offense should be unstoppable. Why? It's got questionable quarterback play, and the offensive line is unsure. The offense should be really good, but unstoppable? They haven't earned the right. You have not watched a team that has earned the right after a 5-7 season to use the word unstoppable. Kevin says, I'm hopeful. No, I get that. Let's see. A couple more buy or sell questions before we wrap things up. Brandon says if we have where did that go, Brandon? If we have 3 wins in a row, I'll be getting a damn monkey tramp stamp. Sell. Brandon, you're going to be in an interesting position the week of the Alabama game. On one hand, that would mean that Texas has its biggest victory, God, since the 2009 season, right? Big 12 championship game. On the other hand, that would mean that for the rest of your life, you have a tramp stamp of a monkey. That wouldn't be me. Eddie Lee with a buy or sell question, jumping in with the super chat. Buy. I have known Steve when he played at BYU. He has learned how to interview. Nick Saban, you make an excellent point. My thing is, OB, keeping it real keeps fans from putting on the burnt orange glasses. Keep real. Hey, man, like I said, I think this is an 8-4 team, which represents a lot of improvement from a year ago. They've got a chance to win a ninth game in a bowl game. I think what you want from this Texas team, by the end, and this is what we said a year ago, and it didn't happen. But what you want from this team is that in November, nobody wants to play Texas. In September, people are going to want a piece of Texas. They are inexperienced at quarterback. They might be really inexperienced at the offensive line if multiple freshmen are in the lineup, and you kind of got to go through these growing pains. And the defense does have to get better, and that isn't all going to happen by September. It's just almost ridiculous to even suggest. It's not ridiculous to suggest that from the beginning of September until the end of November, that this team evolves week by week, and that maybe they're not a top 25 team in September, but maybe by November they're top 15 type good. And that doesn't mean that it automatically shows up in the record, but it means by the end of this season, what you want to see is in 2023, when we say 10 wins, when we say 11 wins, when we talk about Big 12 championship, that it doesn't feel like a leap of faith, that it feels like a leap off of what you've actually watched occur on the field. What didn't happen a year ago is Texas didn't get better as the season went along. It got worse. Its best football was played in September. And then after Oklahoma, it just, the quality of play decreased from there. The opposite you want to occur this season. You don't want this team peaking early. You don't want this team peaking in the middle. You want this team gradually building up to something that by the end of the year, they're really good. And that by the end of the year, they can kick the shit out of somebody in a bowl game, go, let's say, 9-4, finish 15th, 16th in the country, but is legitimized by how it finishes. And then you then I think you could say CFP if we're talking about this program making that type of gradual process all the way up through the season. You don't want that kind of thing happening. Let's see. Let's do like two more questions. I don't see anything in the super chat. Let's see. Buy or sell Satan's last season. I thought that after the A&M thing first happened, kind of depends. I think we're closer to Saban's last season approaching, but that guy has won too much to not leave after a national championship season. If they win the national championship this season, I could see it. Final buy or sell question of the night. Buy or sell from the super chat. 2024 features 4 future O-line. I don't know what that question's asking me. Can you rephrase that question? Because that's 2 seasons away. At that point, I think it would feature 5 future offensive line. Let's see. Okay. Thank you. I'm glad I asked the question. See, that's a completely different deal. The 2024 offensive line features 4 future NFL offensive linemen. Let's end this with a big buy. by by the time we get to 2024, all of these kids in the 2022 class will be growing up. You'll be able to sprinkle in potentially a Hayden Connor into that conversation. Bye. And on that note, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, please. I'm begging you. Do both. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Get your ass over to Orange Bloods and read Tuesday night's practice report. Trust me, as good as I've been on the show, the practice report will be way more in-depth. You'll get a much greater sense of how things look today after full pads. And just know that tomorrow we'll have more video content on the way, including tomorrow night, The Drunk Uncle. The Drunk Uncle live right here on this channel tomorrow night. Everybody that was hanging out tonight, make sure you check that out. It's always an experience. So for myself and Blake, who jumped in for just a moment to tell everybody to like the video and subscribe to the channel, you guys take care. We will see you guys very soon. Hook 'em horns. Here's to a great 2022 season.